Growing up, I was always a NASCAR fan first and foremost, but with a lot of the decisions that they've made over the years, I just found myself sort of gravitating away from it. It felt like they were trying to put on more of a spectacle rather than really embracing the racing that was there. So, with GT racing and endurance racing, as well as the open wheel racing, it really does feel like that is more about the driving, more about the racing itself, rather than trying to put on some sort of spectacle. For me, I enjoyed racing ever since I was a little kid. I definitely grew up with watching the sport with my family, and then when I was young, I tended to enjoy the racing video game genre. I played a couple of racing games on the PC, such as NASCAR Racing 1999 season and Monster Truck Madness. And while I didn't have a full grasp of the sort of realistic racing hobby as a kid, when I was older, I definitely grew more to enjoy the hobby. And then I fully dove in around 2006, 2007 with a couple other NASCAR racing games. And that was the first time I bought a wheel and pedal set. And that was basically opening Pandora's box from that point onward. Growing up, I was always a big fan of Jeff Gordon. It's also interesting because I live about 30 minutes from the city he was born in. So I always felt like that was an interesting coincidence. But I always found him to be this sort of electrifying personality that brought in this new shift from the good old boys redneck nature of NASCAR to this sort of more I wouldn't say TV friendly, but that more energetic, more welcoming nature of the sport. And at first, it was definitely something where he was not as welcomed. They mockingly called him the Wonder Boy and just felt like he was too PC, and just too camera friendly, too well rounded to really be embraced by the sport. But then as time went on, he quickly became one of the sport's most popular drivers. And it was an interesting story to see. And there's that. He was a very inspiring driver. And then another inspiring driver actually is another local to my area, and that is Memo Gidley. He was a endurance race car driver. He also dabbled with IndyCar and other series, and he wrote a couple racing school books actually. And he, a few years back, suffered this horrific accident during the 24 Hours of Daytona, and he broke his back, broke his legs, I believe broke his pelvis, and he basically was sidelined with these debilitating injuries. And he did not let that stop him. He definitely was behind the eight ball in terms of his health, and maybe even getting back into a go-kart or getting into a car. And he just put his nose to the grindstone, and just through sheer determination and will ended up recovering, and not just recovering but also getting back into a race car. And I just find that to be a truly inspiring story for those who are going through tough situations in life and might find themselves maybe not through an injury but through some hardship in life. And it just shows that if you have the drive, you have the determination, you could just find yourself in a climbing out of that tough spot. So one of the times I just felt that I had that true experience of the caliber of racing that sim racing can provide was one time when I was racing in iRacing with the virtual Skip Barber car at Watkins Glen International Raceway. I was battling wheel to wheel with this guy for almost 20 minutes straight. And it was this heated battle at first for second place, but then about halfway through the race, the leader ended up wrecking. So it became a close battle for the lead. And just having that sort of wheel to wheel battling, but at the same time, without any contact, with this air of respect for both myself and for him, that really created this air of competition, this tension that just was intoxicating. It was this sort of spirit of competition that really transcended beyond the traditional norms of gaming. It was just hard racing, and it's something where we were just two guys sitting at desks, like holding onto virtual steering or onto fake steering wheels, onto fake pedals, and still we were getting this incredible level of racing. And that was one of those moments that it really sunk into me that this is just something that I love. One dream car that I've always wanted as a kid would actually be the Dodge Viper SRT10. It is just kind of that era of supercar slash muscle car that really was more about the car and just the power, the engine, versus all the technological advancements. So as a kid, that was one I would always want. Now I would say I kind of prefer the McLaren F1, where it's for a lot of the same reasons, but at the same time, it's slightly more refined. It's more of this compact car. The Dodge Viper was more about this brute power, being loud, being torquey, the loud grunt of the engine. But with the McLaren F1, it's more understated, and it's like all of a sudden, boom, you're at 250 miles an hour. It's like, whew. But yeah, a few years back, I got to see one McLaren F1 in person, and that was just an amazing sight. And it really does give this sort of sense of the car, because you, for car aficionados, car fans, you hear about the McLaren F1 and you think, oh man, this car is larger than life. And then you go and see the car itself, and it's like, this is a surprisingly small car for this kind of legacy it has behind it.